Welcome everyone to our property session this afternoon. And this is really exciting because this is the first of many collaborative sessions that take place between our members. So Symphony 7, for those of you who don't know, is a business community and we're all about using profit as a force for good. So Lindsay, Cynthia, and Maria, who will be presenting today, are all members of our Property Hub and all work closely in the property ecosystem to get work done for their customers. Now, how does it work? Well, people have lots of questions when they're buying property. So today is all going to be focused on that first home buyer experience. So whether you're buying your first investment property, whether you're buying a property for yourself, whether your children are buying properties, it's all going to be relevant. Now, please use the chat box that everyone can see at the bottom, and please ask your questions there. If you've got any questions, what we'll be doing is answering those questions at the end. So first we'll get our experts to present to you, and we've got a couple of special visitors who'll be sharing some of their stories as well, and then we'll open up for questions and give you a chance to get involved and ask the things that you've got to ask. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm very, very excited to introduce our three experts for today. Cynthia Peretz from Metrolinx Property, Lindsay Kotzman from P&B Law, and Maria Robinson from Concinnate Financial Services. Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. So Cynthia has been in the property industry for close to 20 years, and she is extremely passionate about property. And what she's passionate about is really helping people get into the property market. So she's passionate about helping you strategize, helping you choose properties, helping you decide what's going to be best, and helping you make a long-term plan that's going to really help you grow your wealth and get that property really working for you. Now, some of the things that you may not know about Cynthia are that she used to be a pharmacist. Now, that is a while back, and she can share those stories with you. Cynthia is a very kind and generous person, and everyone who knows her knows that she will do anything for anyone. So welcome, Cynthia, and we can't wait to share your incredible insights with everyone. Now, Maria Robinson. Maria owns and operates Concinnate Financial Services, and Maria has spent more than 25 years in the banking, mortgage broking sector. She grew up in the family's business, and she's worked in her own businesses. She's worked in other businesses. She's worked a lot in the franchise sector. Now, one of the things that you may not know about her is that she's a bit of a baker, and she is also a bit of a soap maker. So you can ask her for those special Christmas presents and she'll have them on her way. Maria is really, really passionate about helping her customers get the right deal. There are lots of mortgage options out there, but actually working with all the lenders she has on offer for her and making sure she's helping you choose a product that's really going to service your specific needs. Welcome, Maria. Lindsay Kotzman. Lindsay is from P&B Law, and he has been running that business for over 25 years. Now, property runs in Lindsay's blood, and he will share that with you. Lindsay is 8th generation Australian. Now, I don't know about you, but I know there are many 1st and 2nd generation Australians here, but not many 8th generation Australians. Now, Lindsay loves to ride his bike. He loves to ski, he loves a bit of chemistry, and he loves to cook. So after this, we've decided after lockdown, we're going to have a bit of a cook-off with all the baking and cooking amongst us. Cynthia, I know, likes to make a good curry, so we're all set to go. Now, what I'd like to do is open up to the three of you just to share some stories so people can get to start to know a little bit about you. So Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. What is it that you're passionate about? Why are you so passionate about property?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I am very passionate about property and just been lucky coming to Australia that I have been able to get my dream job and work in the industry. And through the years, I have been lucky to have built up my property portfolio. So a lot of, can I say, young people think property prices are so expensive, especially when you look around areas where we live. The prices are high. So the question is always, is it possible to be able to buy something if we don't have a huge income or savings to use towards buying a property to generate wealth? I've invited Raul, who's my nephew, to come here today as he started his journey 4 years ago when he entrusted myself to help him get into the property market. So over to you, Raul, for your story.
Sure, thanks, Cynth. So, yeah, as Cynth mentioned, I first purchased an investment property 4 years ago. Now, growing up, you're not really taught a lot about finance at school, you know, even in university, and I did a finance major. You learn, you know, it's not something that's very accessible or something that people talk about a lot. So property, you know, for me was always something that I always kind of thought, you know, one day I'll get to. But, you know, that's maybe when I've worked for a couple of years, I have, like, you know, a serious partner and we're looking to settle down. It was always something kind of, you know, in the background of my mind. But I never really kind of understood the benefits of owning a property. And it was about 4 years ago when I started to have a conversation with, you know, my parents and Cynthia at the time. And they started to ask me, you know, what are kind of my long-term goals and plans? I mean, you know, what 23, 22-year-old is trying to set themselves up for 50, 60 years, you know, down the track. It's not very, very common. So, you know, we kind of had a chat, and really it was a great kind of stepping stone to unlocking the world of property. So not only about, I guess, where you're going to buy, but how you're going to, you know, finance it. Are you going to go principal and interest? Are you looking for an investment property or an owner occupied? So kind of all of the, I guess, aspects of owning a property. To be honest, it was a little overwhelming to begin with. I mean, again, it's not something that I'd ever learned, but I was really, really lucky to have, you know, advisor in Cynthia there to kind of help me through the process. And I purchased the property, as you said, 4 years ago for, you know, high threes. And in about 4 years, it's now worth, you know, mid fives. That's quite a substantial gain in a couple of years, where I, you know, previously would never have really been thinking about setting myself up for the future. And, you know, now that I have this property and I can now, you know, look to extend my portfolio. And even if it's, you know, 3 or 4 years ahead of the game, you know, within that time, I've learned so much. And I feel like, you know, through the agent's help, I'm now so much better placed for that second, potentially third property. And what kind of seemed like so far in the future, you know, has been creeping up as I'm more steady in my income. I now have a serious kind of partner. You know, all those things that I was kind of thinking about were 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 years down the track have now, you know, suddenly realized and materialized. So I've now got all of this kind of almost information and skills and knowledge about property that I never had before. So I feel like a lot of people who are my age, who are just trying to get into the game, are already starting behind the 8 ball. And I've kind of, you know, through Cynthia's help, been able to purchase my first property, and will look to invest in more.
Thank you. So Raul's a great example of what someone can achieve. And I've helped many people in this age group start their property journey. And it just, yeah, makes me just feel so good that they're, you know, starting off on the right foot.
Look, Cynthia, I'm going to say it very bluntly. It would have been amazing to have this kind of knowledge and education when, you know, when I was that age. It's an amazing story. Thanks, Raul, for coming on and sharing that with us. Maria, over to you. Can I get you to share a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I grew up in small business and ran my parents' business, and then I went into banking, and I pretty quickly fell in love with banking and particularly lending. And it wasn't about the lending. I love a good puzzle, and I love solving a problem. But the thing that I loved about lending is that it's the vehicle to property, and property has always factored big in my life and my upbringing. And so learning all the tricks of the trade through work, I guess being paid to learn all the tricks of the trade that helps you get into that property market has been really invaluable in my life. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about it is because, you know, by creating wealth, that gives us freedom to make choices, gives us access to options. And it's an avenue to gaining the lifestyle. And I don't mean having goods, having consumer items, but the lifestyle that you want to create by way of being able to exercise your choices and options. And that's been my big passion. It's helped me build a property portfolio, and it's and then helping my clients now in my own business to be able to create that path to wealth has just been fantastic.
Thanks, Maria. You know, it's hearing the stories and the passion from you guys is awesome. Lindsay, can you share a little bit about your story?
Sure. Goodness, where to start? I've been walking around building sites since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. My dad was a property developer, and I watched him build and develop a number of properties over the years. Is probably the most notable one was the Brighton Bay Twin Cinema, which was first established in the 1980s. He built and operated that for about 5 to 10 years. And I've just sort of seen builders doing stuff all my life. So I've just got it in my blood. I just sort of have a great passion for it. I've been a property lawyer now for over 25 years. And I just find that I love to see things actually come to fruition, to see them. I love helping my developer clients when they start from buying a patch of dirt, going through the planning process, getting their planning permits, creating a design, and then organising the building contracts through to financing, and finally selling all their product off the plan and reaping the benefit of that hard work and reward. It gives me constant sense of joy to see them come out well from it. So that's me. And I've been helping people of all ages with buying and selling of properties all through all this time. So I've got a pretty good idea about what's going on in the marketplace.
Thanks, Lindsay. I know that all three of you are so passionate about that, and I think everyone else can sense that as well. Now we're going to the really interesting part of the session where we're going to explore some of the questions, some of the problems, some of the challenges that people consider when they're thinking about going into the property market. What are the roadblocks? What are the things, the fears that people have? Can I get you to use the chat box? And I'm going to ask everyone to get a little bit involved and to share, it might not be a question that you've got right now, but a question that you had, or a question that you do have about what are some of the things that you're concerned about? What are some of the problems that you see ahead when it comes to purchasing property and getting in as an investor, getting in as a home buyer for yourself, and really kind of getting into that property market? As the overwhelming questions are coming into the chat box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our experts to share some of these things. So whether you're wherever you are in your property journey, at some point everyone has some of these thoughts and some of these challenges. And I think one of the really cool things about bringing together experts and about having these experts here is that they ask questions that some of us haven't thought about, but really we need to think about. So Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. Can you share some of the challenges and problems with us?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first question always is, when is the right time to buy? Well, again, you don't have to buy a property to live in you could buy a property like Aral did, that you can rent where you want to live and buy an investment property to already start growing your wealth. Another question is, where do I buy? You know, what are the suburbs? How do I know if I'm buying the right or the wrong property? And another big one is what is the property worth? Am I overpaying? People don't go to auctions every day, so it's very overwhelming when they do go to know, you know, what is the value of the property.
Thanks, Cynthia. That's really got the juices going in everyone, and we've got some questions starting to come in. So thanks, everyone. Maria, do you want to share with us what are some of the challenges from your perspective, from the mortgage perspective?
I think one of the key challenges is really all the complexities and mystique that are surround lending. You know, typically, you know, people don't have insight into credit policies and the way the banks calculate things, and you know how they'll perceive things. So part of the job of a mortgage broker is to break some of those complexities down, and the complexities have actually increased now since the GFC. They increased quite a bit, and now with COVID, quite a bit more again, and there's constantly new legislation coming in, and all that does affect the end borrower. The other thing is the calculations that I mentioned. Those calculations, you know, how different banks calculate your income, calculate your savings, you know, what they'll accept, what they won't. Again, you know, the average person wouldn't know where do you start with all of that. And the third area is first home buyers benefits. There are quite a few home buyer benefits out there from both federal and state governments, and understanding the criteria, the criteria to qualify, but then what you must do to justify receiving the grants and stuff. You know, there's some complexities around that. How do you know what you're entitled to? So there's some of the key areas of challenges that we see.
Thanks, Maria. Lindsay, what about you? What are the things that you see?
Oh, when you're buying a property, you're buying effectively a bit of dirt which is surrounded by boundaries. That's if you're buying land. If you're buying an apartment, you're buying a bit of airspace, which is also surrounded by boundaries. And the boundaries are all laid out in maps in the titles office. And we see all sorts of issues associated with property. There can be a whole variety of different things. Issues that we see is where people have not got building permits and they've gone and built illegal structures on their property. We had a situation, an inquiry only last week, where a person had added a whole living room and dining room at the back of the house and hadn't obtained any permits. Now, the council could turn up any day and issue a demolition order and require that property to be actually knocked down. This was an inquiry we got. We certainly weren't handling that particular conveyance at the time. We get issues of people, we're involved in a matter at the moment where a house is being built half on a title owned by the people and half on Crown land. So there's a problem there, and we're in court about that at the moment. So there's issues with building permits, there's issues with owner builders having to get insurance. There's issues associated with easements and covenants. You can buy a property and you may only be able to, it might be subject to what's called a single dwelling covenant, which means that you're only allowed to build one house or one dwelling on that particular property. You can have easements where people are allowed to actually go across your land, or you're allowed to go across neighbours' land. So they're the types of things that get built into property agreements that you have to be aware of, and even things like owners corporations, making sure that you know what the levies are, what your liabilities are, what your responsibilities are going to be if you buy in a subdivided property where there's common property for which all of the owners in the apartment block own. They have to be managed. There are costs like electricity and things like that that has to be paid for. So you need to know what you're up for when you're getting engaged in an owners corporation as well. So there's plenty of things. Going in with open eyes is the most important thing. If you know what you're getting yourself in for, if you know what you're buying, it helps with both your negotiating of price. For instance, if you're buying a property with somebody having a right to traverse over it, you might be able to knock down the price because of it. There can be all different sorts of ways that we can help you by pointing out the legal defects or the legal problems with the property. If you really want that property, you can use it as a negotiating point as well. So you need to see the lawyer first when you're ready to make your offer and have the contract checked out to identify those types of issues that you can work with as part of your bidding process.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for that. Now, obviously, you know, we're now aware of some of these challenges that we come across and we're going to see out there in the property market. And we know that having experts on our side makes a huge amount of difference. What I'd love you guys to do is to share, Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to share some insights and some solutions to some of these challenges that you've been mentioning?
Oh, yes, sure. So the first one I said was, when is the right time to buy? And this is also going to answer Simon's question, is people think that they can never get into the property market because it's too expensive. And we're going back to the question again, is you don't have to buy a property to live in. You can buy an investment property, as we call them, rent investors. So people rent where they want to live and they buy an investment property to put their toe into the property market. And this way it is more affordable. These people will not be buying the house next door or in the same suburb. We go into the areas where I know that the growth's high, that's a big rental market, and regional Melbourne at the moment is very affordable, and the values are really, really good. So that's answering that one. I've got many examples of people that I've bought for over 3 to 5 years ago, and their growth has been unbelievable. So an important factor is when you're selling a property, you use a real estate agent to help you. A buyer's advocate is there as your independent real estate agent to help you buy a property. Because the honest truth is, and I am a real estate agent, is that the agent is there for the seller. So a buyer's advocate is definitely on the side of the buyer to negotiate the best price and the best terms. And yeah, so with our guidelines, we save you time, money, and the biggest one is we take away stress. And we do this by working with our networks. And through the network, I can research homes, locations, negotiate prices, and working with properties every day. With my guidelines is to take away the fear of buying the wrong property and paying too much. And this is where Jesse's comment comes in, is that Lindsay is an important factor there, because people need to realize that a contract of sale is a legal document, and before they even put pen to paper, it has to be read. There's a lot of words that a lot of us don't even understand. You have to get out a dictionary, and that's where a lawyer's help is just top priority, no questions asked. And that's one thing that people shouldn't cut costs on, because it could be a very costly shortfall. Everyone's heard of the expression FOMO, the fear of missing out. Well, that applies to properties also. But don't let the fear override the decisions that you're making. And that's why using a buyer's advocate, we think with our heads and not with our hearts. And that's where we help you a lot in the process. So working very closely with what I call the A-team, and the A-team being the people around me that help the property process run smoothly. And the A-team will be part of the A-team with the buyer's advocate is the mortgage broker and the property lawyer and the real estate agent and the person doing the pest control and the valuation. And all these people are a really important factor to make the property process run smoothly.
Thanks, Cynthia. Wow. Now we're really hearing some insights. So much to learn, so much to think about. And this is where it gets really exciting, because this is where you really see how the experts can work on your side. I'm really sorry. My kids are making a little bit of noise, so apologies if you hear that. Maria, can I call on you now to share some of the insights from a mortgage perspective? What are the things that you can help people think about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenny. So as a mortgage broker, we have access to quite a few different lenders. For example, I'm accredited with about 30 different lenders, and that's banks and non-banks. So those complexities involved in banking and working out, or in lending and working out which bank is the most appropriate, what policies, what loan structure, rather than, you know, a client running around to numerous banks trying to work out what's best for them and risking having a loan decline on their credit report because the bank they applied with wasn't really the right one, we can cut through that and we can find the right lender for an individual's or a couple's circumstances. What you don't want to do is go to the wrong lender where you're then trying to convince that lender that they should approve your loan. Find one that's most likely to approve the loan. And what we do as mortgage brokers is we will look for the 2 or 3 banks who will look favourably on our client's circumstances, and then we will work out which one has got the best pricing and will offer the best structure and the best products for the way that our clients want to operate their accounts. And we work through all of their needs, their goals, long-term and short-term, to determine what those right structures are and then which bank best meets their needs. Now, currently in Australia, over 60% of lending is done through mortgage brokers. So consumers or borrowers are talking with their feet and going to brokers because they know that we've got access to a vast array of lenders, and we'll do all that running around for our clients. The second thing is that we're problem solvers. So we don't just look at, you know, do you tick these boxes, yes or no? Yes, you can have a loan, or no, you can't. We look at, you know, different potential solutions. And I'm going to use some jargon, sorry everybody, but there's, you know, we look at genuine savings, we look at your deposit, what we call funds to complete, we look at security guarantees, we look at gifts from parents. So there are so many different solutions that we can look at to help somebody get into the market sooner. And also with a lot of the government benefits that are available at the moment for first home buyers, we look at how we can best utilise those to help a client get into the market. So when we're looking at those first home buyer benefits that are available through governments, we look at, given what the client wants to do, what would they qualify for? But also we look at, if we just make a few changes to the individual's goals, how much more can they qualify? And then that way they've got options available to them that can help them determine the best way forward for their circumstances. The other thing that we do is we work very collaboratively. So a mortgage broker really relies on great partners. And it is people like Lindsay who will take care of our clients' legal rights and obligations, and working with someone like Cynthia to be able to source the right type of property, because we also want to make sure that the property value's up. So whatever your client's paying for that property, we want to make sure that when we do a valuation, an independent valuer will also agree with the price that's been paid, but also that a valuer does not make any what we call adverse comments in the valuation. So a property might value up, but then the valuer makes a few negative comments about the property, and the lender might read that and think, oh, you know what, actually, we don't want to accept that property. So by working with someone like Cynthia will make sure the quality of property is there, and so the whole lending process becomes easier as well.
Thanks, Maria. That was awesome. Lindsay, can you share your insights?
Sure. Where to start? There's the key issue, or the key sort of takeaway, is that you need, when you're going in to buy a property, you're signing a contract, you're signing a legal document. So you need to understand that it's going to be legally binding. There is usually a provision for a 3-day cooling off period, but it may or may not apply, and you don't really want to run that risk. You're better off having the contract checked and vetted for all the reasons that I mentioned before, to ensure that there aren't any unexpected consequences of signing the contract. You want to make sure also that you've been pre-qualified for the loan if you need a loan to fund the property. So you need to speak to Maria and make sure that you've got your pre-qualification. It's very, very important not to just simply listen to the real estate agent that's selling the property on behalf of the vendor. Remember, the vendor is pays a real estate agent. You're not paying the real estate agent anything. So the real estate agent only gets paid when he gets your signature on the contract. So that's why you need Cynthia to find the right property for you, Maria to pre-qualify, and then me to check the contract. Because as a team, we can make sure that your best opportunity of getting the right property at the right price ultimately occurs, and make sure that there's no consequences or no issues like the types of issues that I talked about before. When you're buying an owner's corporation, it's an extra layer of complexity, because you need to know what sort of levies have been struck, if there's any structural issues which you might actually be buying into. You might be buying yourself trouble, and cladding is one typical example where you can find yourself in a lot of trouble, which is very topical at the moment. And we can also assist organising to put together the structure of lending that's needed for your bankers, or if you're buying the property for an investment and you want to buy it into a specifically good tax structure like a family trust, we can also help in putting those sort of things together as well. So we're effectively a one-stop lawyer's shop when you're buying property, and but we've got the right people around us as well to make sure that there's not going to be any unexpected surprises.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you. Audrey, I'm going to get you to jump on and have a chat now. Audrey is actually Maria's daughter, and she has been brought up in a family where the value of buying property has been evident from the minute she was born. Audrey, do you want to share a little bit about your story and how you got into the market and what it's meant for you?
Yeah, definitely. So like Jenny said, I grew up in a very property orientated market. I was going to auctions and open for inspections from a very, very young age. I would go and inspect the properties with mum. I would, stand there and watch mum bid at auctions, whether it be for herself or for friends who, did need a buyer's advocate. And at that time, buyer's advocates weren't really around. And so I grew up realising the importance of it. I grew up, seeing my mum do everything she could to build a property portfolio and to keep the property portfolio, and learning why she wanted a property portfolio, why she would go to the extent that she would, because at one point it just sounded mad, the stuff that she would go to keep a property that we didn't need. We weren't living in it, and it made no sense. But then you sit down and you understand, okay, hang on, there's more to it. There's the rent that comes in, there's the extra income, there's the retirement plan, you've got the retirement income, or maybe you sell the property and you live off that. So there's so much more to it that you don't see up front. And so growing up with that was always front of mind for me. And so I was very fortunate when I got my first job at 15, I think it was, just at the local McDonald's. I started saving very, very quickly and very early on. And yes, 15, I started saving for a house. It just sounds absolutely mad, but it was something that I really wanted to get into very early on. So when I finished up high school, got my first full-time job, that's when my savings really ramped up. Within 6-8 months, I think it was, I had my 5% deposit and we went shopping. And I was very fortunate that, I had my mum who had all this expertise, who was able to essentially operate as my buyer's advocate. But not only was she able to do that for me, but she knew who I was. She knew how I operated, where I wanted, what my risk appetite, I guess you could say, is, what extent I was willing to go to. And I think one of the benefits of all of that is that I'm 21. I've had a property for about 2 years now, and I don't need to do anything. We've lived in it, I've rented it out, and I've seen both sides of having property, and I can see that, you know, in 30 years, which is your typical loan size, then I can go ahead and buy another one with only one loan at a time. Now, that's not my plan, but because I've purchased so young, that's an option that I've got that a lot of people won't have. I'll be 49, assuming that, you know, it takes me the full 30 years to pay it off. I'll be 49 and I'll have paid my debt off, assuming that, you know, I still do the minimum as well. So I've been very fortunate to have been able to jump into something so early.
Wow, Audrey, what an inspirational story. It's amazing. Can I just ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah,
You know, many people your age are thinking about travel and thinking about all these things. How does your property and your decision to buy property, how's that impacted on your life and you being able to do what you want to do?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest fears that people have jumping into the property market. They think it's going to make such a massive impact on their financial abilities, their lifestyle, and it doesn't. I still travel, well, outside of the COVID world, I still travel quite often. I go overseas once a year. Now, I've been to about 14 countries in the last about 5 years now, I think it is. So I still constantly travel. And I still go out. I still, you know, hang out with my mates, go get dinner, takeaway, all of that. Go to concerts. It hasn't changed. I mean, it hasn't changed anything for me. There was what I was used to, and there's what my current lifestyle is, and virtually nothing's changed. And it hasn't changed from when I was living in the property, not receiving any rent, and it hasn't changed now that I'm not living in there and receiving rent either. So I've been very fortunate, and it really is, if you do things the right way and you have the right advocates around you, it's really possible to continue to have a lifestyle that you want. And keep in mind as well, a bank's not going to give you a loan you can't afford as well. And so you're not going to be in a position where your lifestyle's changed.
Audrey, I think there are a couple of people here and I'd love a little reaction. You can make a little reaction down the bottom, but who wishes that they knew when they were Audrey's age what she knows now? Wow. Seriously impressive. So thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Ralph, for sharing your story as well. Really, you know, sets the scene for what we're here for today. Now, I'm going to ask the experts some of the questions that have been coming into the chat. So thank you for asking them. Let's start with a couple. Cynthia, I know you have a very strong opinion on this topic. Can you just talk a little bit about off the plan? Is buying off the plan something people should be considering?
Okay, at the moment, in current day, I would say not. But even generally off the plan, if you can't afford to pay back your repayments, if you didn't have a tenant, you don't buy off the plan. And as Maria said, the valuations aren't coming up. So if you have to pay in when you have to settle, you need to be able to have that extra money. So it depends on the circumstances. Off the plan can be very dangerous, but yet if you have the cash flow off the plan can be good. Some people want to be able to put down a 10% deposit now, knowing that if the property is going to be built in the next 18 months, they've got time that they can still save. But then again, they need to be able to have that cash flow that if it doesn't value up, they can still settle the property. I've seen many people, and I'm sure so has Maria and Lindsay, that have had to forego their 10% because they can't settle a property. And the same goes with the house and land packages. You have to pay interest payments as they keep building. So again, you have to make sure that you've got the money. So off plan can be good for some and not for others. So it really depends on the circumstances.
Can we talk about renovating versus new build? Well, what's everyone's thoughts? Lindsay, have you got anything to say on that?
Very, very tough question. The benefit of renovating is that you don't pay stamp duty because you're not buying another block. You're not selling in order to be able to buy a newer house or a house that's closer to your needs. But when you're renovating, there's always going to be issues which arise which weren't expected. The house may need rewiring, the house may need replumbing, connections to the sewer may not be as good as you'd hope they would be. And so therefore you're taking something that exists and trying to add something onto it. I've seen some very, very successful renovations. As a general rule, I'd like to recommend that clients start with a new build, because I know that when they've got a new build, they get a 7-year warranty, which they get with a renovation, but there can be issues associated with what was or wasn't covered in the renovation. But they'll get a 7-year warranty from the builder. It's a structural warranty, and they know that the whole house has got everything new. So having everything new means that there's less chance of things going wrong, at least for the foreseeable future. So overall, prefer a new build. If you need to renovate, it's a second option, but just make sure that your construction contract with your builder is watertight and that you've covered over all the various issues.
Thanks,
When
Lindsay.
it comes to construction contracts, I've got a whole different story about that.
That's for another day.
That's for another day.
Now, okay, so I know for many people, when they've been brought up, you know, they've always considered that they would like to buy property around the area where they live. Now, can I get you guys to talk about this a little bit? And I know, Cynthia, you talk about the rent vesting concept. Can you just talk a little bit about how can we think, what are the questions we should be asking ourselves, and where should we actually be looking to buy? What should we be asking?
Okay, so yeah, so going back to the point of I can't afford to buy where I live, so I'm just not going to buy any property. There are areas for everybody. You know, we might stay in our comfort zone, but you just drive half an hour north, south, east, or west, and there's another full community of people, and they're great options out there. So I'm a big believer in regional Melbourne, and there are a lot of outer areas that you can still pick up a 4-bedroom house for $450,000. I don't know if anybody here can see something here, but you can get a nice little size ground and have a garden and have a what I call a move-in ready home, where you literally don't have to do anything. That's the money that you paid, and you don't have to add in anything more. So yeah, there's a lot of different areas, and there are a lot of options out there. People just have to think out of the box, and it also depends on what you want for your future. A lot of companies are not in the city center anymore. So far from where, you could say. So let's say people are in Ballarat. There's now an express train that takes 60 minutes to get to the CBD. I know I've sold house and land packages in Werribee, and people have been working in South Melbourne, and it can be faster on the train from Werribee to South Melbourne than somebody getting in their car in Brighton in their everyday life, driving into the city with the stress. So, you know, people just need to think about work-life balance. And then on the other hand, if they buy something, what could they do with it in the future?
Thanks, Cynthia. Now, Lindsay, this is a hairy one, I'm just warning you. Can you just share with us, I know people hear the word conveyancer when we start talking about property. What's the difference between a conveyancer and a property lawyer, and why is it actually important to have a property lawyer on your team?
A conveyancer is basically a person that has often worked within a law firm and done the documentation necessary for a transaction to take place. Now, doing the documentation doesn't really give the person an in-depth knowledge or understanding of what the law of property is all about. When I went to law school, we started with the absolute basics of what property was, how it came about. And with that, we developed a breadth of knowledge about a whole range of issues because we were challenged and we had to read the cases that related to problems associated with the property, property rights, and contract law as well. So being a conveyancer means that you've learnt the process of processing, but the minute that something really goes wrong, the conveyancer will say, it's out of my field. I really don't know what I'm doing. And you have to go to a lawyer, or we're in dispute and you have to go to the lawyer. So we offer effectively a lawyer offers an across the board solution and can handle everything that crops up in relation to your property. If you end up going to court, we can handle that as well. In the unlikely event, I've got plenty of property dispute cases, but there are, I've had all sorts of weird things happen over the years where clients have brought me circumstances where the conveyancer has been unable to handle it, and I've had to pick up the mantle very, very quickly and run the case for the client because it's been out of the depth of the conveyancer. So asking a property lawyer to run your conveyance or run your transaction puts you in a far better position because we know how to respond appropriately when problems arise.
Can I ask you guys a question around appreciation of country and city properties? So how do the values change? And if, you know, a young investor or any investor for that matter is buying in the country, is the property going to go up in value like the city properties? What should people be thinking about?
You're getting better value for your money. They won't grow as fast as in the city, but as an investment, your rental returns are between 6 and 7%. You find me a property in the Melbourne Metro that gives you that return, I haven't seen one. So that's the difference. You will still, again, it's the land that grows in a value, and I've seen some amazing growths. And it depends on when you get into the area. So like for instance, whether it was Cranbourne, Pakenham started like 5-6 years ago, you were paying, you were buying land for a really good price, when now it's probably gone up another $80,000. It's crazy. You were out in Ballarat, Werribee, but as people start to like these areas, so the price of the land goes up. So you still are growing value, but the biggest thing is that your rental income's higher.
It's all about supply and demand. I was looking at a property in Geelong for a client just recently in the last couple of days, and the particular suburb has doubled in value in the last 3 to 5 years, and that really surprised me. But the different suburbs come into and go out of vogue over time. They get filled up, gentrified, and then new blood comes in and they say we're going to reinvigorate the suburb, and that's effectively what happens. So every suburb effectively can go through a cycle, and you've got to just pick the right time. And that's where Cynthia is so important, in being able to assist in finding those particular properties where your best prospects of having growth are.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things with regional areas is there are towns that are dying off and you should not buy in, and there are towns that will be growing. And I have part of my portfolio is in regional Victoria and part of it is in Melbourne. The town that I've bought in regional Victoria is about 25 minutes out of Geelong. The government recently put double lane highways in from Geelong to this town, and the value of the property is skyrocketed. So I've got a better rental return. I bought at a very, very cheap price, and now I've had amazing capital growth as well. So if you know, with the research that Cynthia does, identifying the right sort of areas is important. And areas within Melbourne, I think Lindsay's hit the nail on the head. You want to look at scarcity of land in order to get capital growth. You know, it depends on what motivates you. Is it yield or is it capital growth? That's pretty important. And one of the things that we do as brokers is I look at lender policies. If a lender won't lend to a particular type of property, there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons is there isn't a big market that will want to buy it again, or it's because those properties sit on the market for quite some time. At the moment, we're seeing 51% of properties that were bought off the plan undervaluing. And that data has come from CoreLogic, who are Australia's leading property research company. And there are some banks as well that have got spreadsheets where they note properties, particularly high density dwellings, that they will not lend to. So I'm not a property expert like Cynthia, and I'm not a legal expert like Lindsay, but I use credit policy from the banks. If the banks won't lend in certain areas, then to me, that begs the question, should you buy in those areas?
Yeah, wow, Maria, that's so important to consider. Now, can I ask you guys, how does the process work? Who do I go to first? I have a million questions. Who do I start with? Who's the first person in the food chain?
I think I am, because I work out the strategy and what the person's actually looking for. And then when I know what they're looking for, then we'll find out financially what they can afford and how they can do it. Because there's, as Maria said earlier on, there's so many ways of whether you've got the income or the savings, there's guarantors, there's these first homeowner grants, there's that building grant. So there's a lot of options that when she knows what you are looking for, she can then take that on, so we can know what people can spend. I mean, there's two really important factors. The location, and one of the biggest things is that I look to see what the councils are doing in the areas, to see what the changes are, to make sure that you're near schools and things like that. So your area is really, really important. And also the value and what you can afford. You know, people have this wish list and they think that they, you know, let's say that they're selling their own home. Everybody thinks that their values are so high, but really what's the reality? And that's where the broker is so important as the next step.
I think they do say location, 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 don't they? Now, can I ask you, you know, a lot of people just want to get into the game. They want to be in the game. How do you just get into the game? Like, you know, do you need a huge amount of money to get started? What do you do?
I think it depends on the situation. So firstly, I would say, don't assume you need a huge amount of money, and don't wait until you have got a huge amount of money, because chances are by the time you accumulate that huge amount of money, property values have increased further. So my suggestion would be, if you have got any interest in property whatsoever, reach out to experts, and you know, whether it's whether it's Cynthia or a buyer's advocate, a mortgage broker, a property lawyer, talk to an expert to start having the conversation, so that we can look at how, because it's not about do I qualify, it's how can we get you to qualify sooner, and that's pretty important. And you know, pre-approval, so I always get pre-approvals for my clients before they start actually looking to buy. Pre-GFC, you kind of thought, well, if you had either equity or a high income, we could find a lender that would do it for you. And I remember going to auctions, bidding way above what I'd been pre-approved for at the time, or I'd be buying at auction without a pre-approval. Today you don't, and so part of being ready to buy with, and it's whether you're ready to buy today or you know, in 12 months time or 3 years time, start talking to the experts, work out your strategy. Then if you're not ready today, at least you know what you need to achieve to be ready. You put a plan in place for that. You get, you know, you do your property strategy with Cynthia, you get your pre-approval with a mortgage broker or myself, and then you're ready to go.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, everyone. Now, I would love you all to leave a comment in the chat box to let us know, you know, what did you most enjoy from today? What was your takeaway? What was the piece of information that most kind of triggered some thinking in your mind? Because the amount of insights that our experts have shared is really incredible. So thank you all. Now, Cynthia, Lindsay and Maria have put together an incredible infographic which actually takes you through the steps that are involved in buying a property. Now, either you can put your email address in the chat box and we will get that emailed to you, or you can send me a private message and I'll make sure that they have that information and we will send it to everyone who has registered for the event. So thank you all for coming. I really encourage you to reach out to our incredible experts. Can I get Cynthia, Maria and Lindsay, can you pop your details in that chat box so people know how to contact you? Really thank you all for coming and spending your afternoon with us. Thank you, Audrey and Raoul, for sharing your experiences and your insights, because I think hearing a real story really makes you understand that it actually is possible. It's doable. It's not just a made up thing. So thank you both for spending your time to be with us today. Thank you, Lindsay, Cynthia and Maria, for sharing your insights and your advice with everyone, and really look forward to speaking to you all. Please reach out to them. And if you've got any questions, feel free to stay back and ask some questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.